27. Years ago, Clara vanished. Now one forgotten photo reveals the chilling truth they buried. They say a mother knows, even when the world tells her she's wrong, when the facts don't add up, and the case is closed, a mother still knows. Valerie didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in patterns, in instincts, in the way a tiny detail could unravel everything. And the day she saw Clara's old photo again, she felt it, that sharp, gut-punching certainty. They had all missed something. This wasn't grief anymore. This was a warning. It had been raining all morning, the kind of rain that blurred your vision, softened the world into watercolors. Valerie sat at the kitchen table, her coffee long gone cold, the newspaper folded beside her untouched. The photo sat in her hand, worn edges, faded corners. But the face in the center, Clara's, stared back at her as vividly as the day it was taken. The class photo, 3rd grade, 27 years ago. She traced Clara's face with her finger, lips pressed together. It wasn't nostalgia. It was nausea. The unease had crept in weeks ago, triggered by an article she saw online. A local archive story about the Haven Institute's anniversary. They called it a healing home. She remembered it differently. That was the last place Clara had ever been. Valerie rose from the table, crossed the room, and pulled down a dusty shoebox from the top shelf of the closet. Inside were letters, report cards, old drawings, remnants of a girl with too much imagination and a quiet way of seeing the world. There was one drawing in particular that stopped her, crayon on cheap paper. A field, a tree, a tall woman in the distance. And next to the woman, something scribbled in black, something shadowed and wrong. She stared at the drawing for a long time. Clara had drawn it the week before the accident. No one paid attention. Kids draw strange things all the time, the therapist had said. But Valerie remembered her daughter's face that week, pale, withdrawn, restless at night. There were things Clara never said, and things no one had bothered to ask. She slipped the photo and the drawing into her coat pocket and drove across town, to the one place she had avoided all these years. Anita's bookstore. Anita had been Clara's teacher. Soft-spoken, gentle, but watchful. She ran a little second-hand shop now, all creaking floors and the smell of old pages. The bell above the door jingled as Valerie stepped inside. Anita looked up and froze. "Valerie, I need to talk to you," Valerie said, voice low. "About Clara." The two women sat across from each other, the years folding between them like dust-covered pages. "She was different that last month," Anita said quietly, distracted. "I tried to ask, but she'd always smile and say nothing. Then the field trip happened." The field trip. Valerie had forced herself not to think about it for decades. A class hike to the nearby nature preserve. A storm rolled in. Chaos. Clara went missing. They found her a day later, or so they said. Valerie took out the photo and placed it on the table. "Look closely." Anita adjusted her glasses, her brows furrowed. "Where's Ben?" Valerie leaned in. "Exactly. He was standing next to Clara that day. I remember. But he's not in the picture." Anita stared at her. "You think the photo was altered?" "I think something was erased. Or someone. And if that's true, what else have they hidden?" The rain picked up, tapping faster against the windows. A hollow sound filled the room. Memory, regret, and a rising tide of dread. Valerie stood, folding the photo back into her coat. I'm going to the Haven. Anita didn't stop her. Outside, the wind had shifted. The clouds hung lower, heavier. Valerie paused under the awning, pulled out the photo once more. Clara's face, framed by damp fingers, looked calm. But her eyes, they were too sharp for a child. If she lied about something this small, Valerie whispered, more to herself than anyone else. What else have they buried? And as she slid the photo back into her coat, the ticking of a nearby wind-up clock echoed faintly through the quiet street, each second louder than the last. Valerie didn't sleep that night. The ticking clock on the motel wall felt like a metronome to her spiraling thoughts. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Clara's face. Not the one from the obituary, not the posed portrait on the hospital wall, but the one frozen in the old photograph, surrounded by children, with that odd, unreadable smile. It wasn't joy. It wasn't peace. It was something caught between amusement and control, like a teacher watching her class, but hiding something behind the clipboard. Morning came gray and humid. Valerie sipped stale coffee in the motel lobby and stared out at the street, waiting for the moment she'd feel brave enough to return to the Haven. Not as a curious outsider. Not this time. This time she was going back as a daughter. The air felt heavier as she walked through the wide automatic doors. The nurse at the reception desk barely glanced up. Same bleached scent, same polished floors. Only now, Valerie noticed things she hadn't before. The peeling corner of a motivational poster, the flickering light above the nurse's station, the fact that every clock in the wing was set 5 minutes fast. She found her way back to room 207. Anita was awake, propped up against her pillows, fiddling with the hem of her blanket. Her eyes lit up when Valerie entered, then clouded just as quickly. "You came back," Anita said softly. "I said I would." There was a silence. Then Anita motioned toward the chair. "You still want to know about her, Clara." Valerie sat. More than ever. Anita took a shaky breath, then began. "She wasn't always like that. Not in the beginning. When I first started, Clara was brilliant. Strict, yes. But she loved those kids. Or she said she did." Valerie leaned forward. "Said she did?" Anita's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her glass of water. There was a change. After the accident. Valerie's stomach turned. "Accident?" "April of '96, spring trip to the lake. Whole class went. They left with 28 kids and came back with 27. A boy named Jeremy Raskin just vanished." Valerie stared. "Vanished how?" "No one knows. One moment he was walking with the others. Next he was gone. No footprints. No splash. No scream. Just gone." Clara led the search, but after that she was never the same. Tighter. Colder. Started calling the children by numbers, not names. Valerie's skin prickled. "She what?" Anita nodded. She'd say things like, 17 is falling behind, or 3 is lying again. She said names made them too soft, too emotional. She wanted order, precision. Valerie glanced at the photo again, the one she had folded neatly in her jacket pocket. The class, posed outside the lake. Clara standing behind them, hand on one boy's shoulder. She hadn't noticed before, but now she looked closer. Clara's hand wasn't resting. It was gripping. Her knuckles were white. "I need to see the old records," Valerie said. Anita hesitated. They sealed them. After what happened in '97, but there might still be something in the old archive room. 3rd floor, past the storage wing. Valerie stood. "Can you take me?" I can tell you how to get there. They'd notice if I left the floor. Valerie didn't wait. The elevator groaned as it climbed. Each floor felt like peeling back a layer of the past. The third floor was colder, darker, a hallway lined with locked doors. She counted them. 7 on the left, 8 on the right. But only one had no label. A door with no name, no plaque. It opened with a squeal. Inside was dust, old filing cabinets, stacks of paper yellowed by time. She searched. Nothing labeled 1996. Nothing labeled Haven Lake Trip. Then she saw it. A box, unmarked, shoved behind a broken chair. Inside, folders, reports, a school newsletter with a photo of Jeremy Raskin, smiling, gap-toothed, holding a fishing rod. Valerie ran her fingers across the page. He had the same ears as her brother. A strange pang shot through her. She turned the page and froze. A report, handwritten, dated June 2nd, 1996. Student 4 continues to resist standardization, recommending removal from active rotation. Clara Wexler. Valerie's breath caught. Removal from active rotation? What did that even mean? She turned another page, and something fell out. A small Polaroid. Jeremy again, but not smiling. Sitting on a chair, hands in his lap. Behind him, a white wall. A number scrawled above his head. 4. Valerie backed away, heart pounding. She knew that wall. It was in the Haven, the therapy wing. The same chair still sat there today. She shoved the folder into her bag and left the room, barely able to breathe. The hallway suddenly felt longer, like it had stretched. She passed door after door, each one now feeling like a question she didn't want to ask. When she got back to the first floor, she didn't stop walking until she was outside. The sun had broken through the clouds, but she didn't feel any warmth, only cold certainty. Clara had known what happened. She hadn't just lost a student. She'd made him disappear. And if Clara had done that once, what else had she been capable of? Valerie took out the Polaroid and stared at the boy's eyes, wide, unblinking. She whispered, not sure who she was speaking to anymore. I think I just found what everyone else missed. Valerie sat on the motel bed with her bag still zipped, her hands trembling on her lap. The Polaroid sat on the nightstand like a relic no one ever meant to see again. Outside, the evening traffic hummed, indifferent to the truth uncoiling in her chest. She had come back to find out what her mother had seen all those years ago. Now she was seeing it too, and it was worse than she imagined. She called home. Her husband picked up on the third ring, his voice gentle, already worried. Val, I found something, she whispered. She explained everything. The photograph, the report, the boy named Jeremy. She spoke in a low tone, as if Clara herself might be listening from the motel walls. Her husband stayed quiet for most of it. Then finally, Are you coming home? Valerie stared out at the red neon sign flickering outside her window. Not yet. Sleep came late and brought no peace. She kept dreaming of the photo, the boy's wide eyes, the number above his head, 4. She kept hearing Clara's voice, though she'd never really known its sound. In the dream, it was crisp, cold, and calm. Too much empathy leads to chaos. The next morning, she returned to the Haven, not through the front doors this time, but around the side, through a rusted staff exit that hadn't seen use in years. She needed to go somewhere no one would guide her to. She needed the basement. The map she'd pulled from an old filing cabinet marked it as the Behavioral Observation Wing, sealed off in 2001 due to water damage, but the metal door still opened with a sharp push. Inside, the air was thick and damp. Lights flickered. The hallway smelled of mold and something older, like old paper and fear. Valerie moved past the first room, then the second, each one identical. Tiny, a desk, a chair, a mirror that wasn't a mirror. Room 4 made her stop. It had no door, only a curtain. She pulled it back slowly, and there, under a dust-covered light, stood the same chair. Wooden, bolted to the floor. The same scuffed linoleum. The same faint outline of the number 4 scratched into the back wall. Her stomach turned. She stepped inside. The air was colder here. She imagined Jeremy sitting there, a child, told he was a number, observed, labeled, removed. Then she heard a sound, not from inside the room, but from the hall. Footsteps, slow, careful. Valerie backed into the corner, heart pounding, breath caught in her throat. A silhouette passed the doorway, a tall figure in a white coat. The curtain didn't move. The figure paused, then walked on. She waited a full minute before stepping out. The hallway was empty again. She hurried back up the stairwell, her lungs tight with panic. Just before she reached the top, her hand froze on the rail. There, etched into the metal in small, careful script, were 3 words. She never left. Valerie ran. Outside, she gasped for air. The sun was too bright, too sharp, like it was cutting into her thoughts. What did that mean? Clara was dead, buried. Her mother had seen the obituary herself, unless... Valerie reached for her phone and called Anita. She never left, she said, breathless. Did Clara die here? A pause. Then Anita's voice, brittle. That's what they told us, but we never saw a body. Just a closed casket. Quick funeral, no press. Valerie's heart thudded. So she could have... I don't know, Anita whispered. But if you're asking me if I believe Clara Wexler is gone, no, I don't. Valerie hung up without saying goodbye. Back in her car, she stared at the building through the windshield. Every window seemed to be watching her. Every wall holding a secret. And suddenly, she understood. It was never just about what happened to the children. It was about what happened to Clara. Because if she never left, if she was still here, somewhere in the walls, in the rules, in the rhythm of the place, then the Haven was not a hospital. It was a machine, and Clara was still running it. Valerie didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat cross-legged on the motel floor, surrounded by every document, map, and clipping she'd pulled about the Haven. Her coffee went cold. The photo of Jeremy stared up at her. The scribbled name. Clara hovered in her thoughts like a ghost that refused to settle. She searched public records, found nothing, no death certificate, no formal closure of the facility. Just a string of administrative handoffs, foundation grants, and corporate name changes. Like someone had systematically scrubbed every trace of accountability. She finally found one name that hadn't vanished. Dr. Michael Harrow. He'd been the director during the final years of Clara's tenure and was still listed as emeritus consultant, on the clinic's hidden advisory board. So she drove. The address led her far out of town, into the hills where the city lights thinned and the houses grew farther apart. It was a simple ranch-style home, weathered, with no sign of life except for the dim glow in the window. She rang the bell once. The door opened halfway, revealing an old man with stark white hair and a deeply lined face. He looked at her with weary recognition, as if he'd been expecting this moment for years. "You're Clara's daughter." Valerie froze. "Excuse me?" But the man simply nodded. "I knew she had one. We all knew. We just didn't know when she'd come looking." He let her in without another word. The house was quiet, filled with the musty scent of old books and burnt coffee. Stacks of documents lined the floor. In the corner, a locked filing cabinet. On the wall, a faded photograph of the Haven in its earliest years. "Clara was never meant to run the facility," he began, settling into a creaky armchair. "She was brilliant, yes. Methodical. Cold, some said. But that's what they wanted back then. Detachment. Efficiency." Valerie sat across from him, barely breathing. "But something happened," he continued. "They gave her too much control. She began selecting her own cases. Children she believed were on the brink. Of what? No one was quite sure. She said she could spot it. Darkness. Trauma. A signature. She believed some kids were marked. And she believed she could erase it." Valerie's stomach churned. "Erase what?" "The parts that made them unpredictable." He looked up, his eyes tired. "She built her own treatment wing. Off the books. No audits, no supervision. We called it the quiet floor. No one was supposed to know about it. Not even me. But I saw the reports, the sedation logs, the infrared recordings. Some of those kids never left." He paused, then added, more to himself, "But Clara never left either. Not really." Valerie shook. "So she's alive?" Harrow didn't answer. Instead, he stood, walked slowly to the filing cabinet, and unlocked it. From within, he pulled out a slim black folder, yellowed with age. Inside, pages of reports, timestamps, patient IDs. He handed it to her. The top sheet was labeled Patient 43. No name, just a code. But the photo paperclipped to the file made Valerie's breath catch in her throat. It was her, as a child, sitting in the same bolted chair from room 4. She looked up at Harrow, stunned. This can't be right. I've never been a patient." He shook his head. "Clara kept files on dozens of children who were never formally admitted. She believed early exposure to trauma marked future instability, and she believed she had the right to intervene." Tears welled in her eyes. "My mother, she experimented on me?" Harrow didn't speak. He didn't need to. Valerie stood, the folder pressed to her chest like it might burn her hands. "Why didn't anyone stop her?" He looked down. "Because most of us thought she was right." As she walked back to her car, the sky had darkened into a storm-gray smudge. Thunder rumbled softly in the distance. She sat behind the wheel for a long time, the photo of her younger self in her lap. She had no memory of that room, but somehow she'd been in it. The next question was, how much of her life had been built on things she was made to forget? And if Clara had erased part of her once, was she still doing it now? Valerie barely remembered the drive back. The rain hit her windshield like angry fingers tapping out a message in Morse. But her mind was already elsewhere, back in that file, that photo, the sterile room where she now knew she had sat, restrained and silent. Her memories of childhood had always been disjointed, a patchwork of feelings more than facts. The warmth of her foster mom's kitchen, the chill of a hospital room she thought was just a flu ward, a woman's perfume she never could place, clinging to her pillow long after the dream ended. But now, she knew it hadn't been a dream, and the woman, the scent, had been real. Clara. She returned to the motel and laid everything out on the bed. Harrow's file, her notes, the map she'd been building with red string and trembling fingers. There was still one place left she hadn't dared approach. The Haven. The original campus had been shuttered, yes, but the grounds still existed. She'd seen a permit filed for redevelopment. The coordinates hadn't changed. That night, Valerie made a decision. She wouldn't run anymore, wouldn't follow the breadcrumbs. She would walk straight into the belly of the thing her mother built and tear it open. So at sunrise, she drove. The road to the Haven was overgrown, riddled with broken signs and fallen branches. The outer gate was chained shut, rusted at the lock, but the perimeter fence had a section bent outward, as if someone, or something, had pushed to escape. Valerie slipped through. The main building stood like a carcass, its windows blacked out. Vines swallowed the corners. But as she stepped inside, the air changed. It was colder, still, as if time itself had been trapped there. She wandered the halls slowly, flashlight dancing across nameplates, now worn blank, peeling wallpaper, an old tricycle overturned near the west wing. Her footsteps echoed like they weren't alone. Then she found it, the quiet floor. The stairwell was sealed with a false panel, but her hands, trembling and sure, found the latch hidden behind a loose tile. The door gave way with a groan, and she descended into darkness. Everything below smelled preserved, too preserved. Room 4 was exactly as she remembered from the photograph. Chair, restraints, one-way mirror. The air held a sterile tang that felt out of place in a building so long abandoned. But then something moved. Not a shadow, not her own reflection. A real shape, standing behind the glass. A woman, silver hair, straight posture, eyes sharp enough to slice air. A face aged but unmistakable. Clara. Valerie staggered backward. The door to room 4 clicked behind her, then opened. No alarm, no scream. Just a quiet voice, calm as winter water. "You came back." Valerie turned, heart pounding. "I had to," she whispered. "You left me no choice." Clara nodded slowly, like she'd expected this. "You don't remember what happened here." "I remember enough." "No," Clara said, stepping into the room fully now, her shoes silent on the polished floor. "You remember pain. I remember purpose." Valerie clenched her fists. "You drugged me, watched me like I was a case file. I was your daughter." "You were a risk," Clara said, as if correcting a child. They all were. Every child I treated here carried the blueprint for tragedy. I only wanted to redirect it. And Jeremy? Valerie's voice broke. "What did you do to him?" Clara's face didn't change. "Jeremy was special. He resisted everything, even sedation, but he wasn't lost, not entirely. What does that mean? A long pause. He's still here. Valerie froze. Alive? Where? She demanded. But Clara only turned her back and walked into the next room, door swinging behind her like an invitation or a trap. Valerie followed, every nerve screaming. The hallway beyond was filled with doors, each labeled with a patient number, and one of them still had a red light glowing above it. She stepped closer. Her fingers hovered over the handle, and then a voice echoed from inside. A boy's voice, calling her name. Valerie's hand trembled as it met the cold metal handle. The red light above the door flickered once, like a heartbeat caught mid-pulse. She hesitated, for a breath, for a lifetime. Then she pushed. The door creaked open into a room she could barely comprehend. Not a cell, not a hospital room, but a living space. Simple, sparse, lit by a single lamp in the corner, next to a stack of sketchbooks, a worn blanket, a boy's hoodie, much too small now, folded neatly on a chair. The air smelled like antiseptic and cinnamon. And sitting in the middle of the room, his back to her, was Jeremy. He was older than she remembered, older than in any memory she had. 18, maybe 20. Not a boy anymore, but still him. Still those shoulders, still that impossible stillness. Jeremy? Her voice cracked on the name. He turned, eyes dark, searching, not shocked, but curious. Like part of him had been waiting for her, and another part didn't know why. Val? She broke. Tears poured from her like a flood held back for decades. She stepped toward him, afraid if she blinked, he'd disappear again. But he didn't move, didn't rise, just watched. What happened to you? She asked, dropping to her knees before him. I don't know, he said. I remember the classroom, then being here. Clara said I got sick, said they were trying to help me. Help you? She whispered. You were taken. He flinched. I know. I think I know. But it's fuzzy, like someone cut pieces out of my brain. Valerie looked around the room again. Too clean, too staged. She turned back. Do you want to leave? I'm not sure I can. Before she could ask what he meant, the door behind them closed. Clara. She stood there, arms crossed, not menacing, but unshaken, watching. I kept him safe, she said quietly. You caged him, Valerie snapped. He wasn't ready, Clara replied. The world devours boys like him, like you. I did what no one else would. I kept them alive. But at what cost? Clara's eyes softened, for the first time, almost human. I've spent years watching the world break children in half and pretend it was medicine. I broke the rules so others didn't have to break. Valerie stood. You took their future. That's not protection. That's control. A long silence. Then Jeremy rose. I want to go, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Clara's face didn't change, but something inside her cracked. Then go, she said, but don't come back, either of you. Valerie didn't need to be told twice. She took her brother's hand and led him down the hallway, past the quiet floor, up into the moldy light of day. They walked without speaking, out the gate, back to her car. The sun was rising now, Real sunlight. Not fluorescent, not manipulated. Just morning. Jeremy turned to her before they got in. Are you sure I'm real? She nodded, still crying. I'm not sure of anything, but I'm sure you're mine. They drove until the road became familiar, until the wind no longer smelled like ghosts. In the motel room, she made him tea. They sat on opposite ends of the bed, saying nothing, letting time fill the space between them. And that night, Valerie opened her laptop for the last time. She uploaded everything: the photo, the files, the recordings. She didn't name names. She didn't point fingers. She just let the truth out. And then she turned off the screen. Outside, the wind was still. Inside, for the first time in decades, she wasn't. She was home,